Oh my God.
Why?
I didn't know.
Bowling for Soup are a lot of people's favourite pop punk band. And I think you underestimate how much impact they've had.
Neck Deep are the best British pop punk band in history.
And number one, the greatest pop punk band of all time.
Hello, welcome back to the ManOverboardPodcast. We've done the top 10 pop punk albums of all time. Now it's time for the top 10 pop punk artists of all time.
This list is going to be a bit more definitive and a bit more based on factual things rather than opinion. But there will be some opinion in there. However, I think that we've both tried to go for bands that have, the cultural impact plus, the music that they put out, their entire discography. We've tried to address everything in them. So let's get straight into this. You can go first, Joe.
Number 10 is, for me, Yellow Card.
Oh, okay.
Yellow Card, I've got to admit, really, it's just Ocean Avenue that earns them this place. But that album in itself is special. I think it's one of those that is just pop punk. The whole thing sounds exactly what you expect pop punk to sound like. And it is one of few platinum pop punk records. It sold 1 million copies in the United States. And I think people, maybe more modern fans or even older pop punk heads, don't realise just how big that album was. So some big tracks, Ocean Avenue, Breathing, and then Lights and Sounds, which was from a different album. But it's annoying with Yellow Card because there's not too much to go into because it is really just this piece of work. Some of the later stuff's all right. It's not horrible, but I feel like there was no evolution in the sound. It didn't really change much. But that album and Yellow Card deserve a place on the list.
You reckon all the way up to number 10?
Yeah.
Okay. We're going with my number 10 now. Coming in hard, a band you are very fond of here. Number 10, The Story So Far. Oh, I know, yeah. A bit of a twist to throw in there. So I've always liked them. I've always been a fan of their music. I never really fully got into their, the ins and outs of their music until we saw them supporting Blink-182, at which point I had a newfound kind of respect for them because their live show, not only is it phenomenal, it's also very different to a lot of pop punk bands out there. And I think a lot of that lends itself to Parker's raspiness of his voice, and he's got a lot more powerful voice than most pop punk vocalists do. And in the way that you tend to get whiny, kind of singy-songy in most pop punk bands. I'm not saying that's bad, I enjoy that kind of style, but versus Parker's aggressive raspiness in his voice, I think it adds a nice dynamic to it. The instrumentals on a lot of their songs, what the instruments are doing, are really listenable, but they don't go too far into technicality. They do stick to the roots of pop punk. It's very easy to listen to, a little bit more aggressive. And I think, as a whole, it is the epitome of pop punk. I think The Story So Far project is just pop punk through and through. There's not really many misses that they've come out with. There's some songs that maybe weren't the greatest, and some albums flew under the radar. But as a whole, I think they definitely deserve a spot up there. And they formed in 2007, which was kind of towards the end of the initial pop punk boom, which you kind of saw towards very late 90s to early 2000s. Towards the end of that, as we're coming closer to 2010, was when they formed. So they've clearly been inspired by some of the earlier bands that will definitely feature later on the list. And that then lends itself to them being, I don't know if you class them as second or third wave pop punk, but I think they're bands that have definitely had an influence on the newer bands that we've seen since 2015 and onwards. This is a band that a lot of them will have listened to.
In a weird way, I think I class The Story So Far as that newer wave. There hasn't really, other than maybe the more recent Kenny Hoopla, etc.
Yeah.
I think The Story So Far have been one of the most consistent pop punk bands for a long time. Even if you compare them to some of the old heads, when they've been releasing albums at the same time as Green Day and Blink and stuff in recent years, I think their projects have been better pop punk albums than more recent Blink and Green Day stuff have. So I have nothing but respect for him, and I completely agree. I think Parker's he's got a unique voice, and they've got quite a big fandom for a band that haven't released an album in 6 years.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited for the new one.
They've kept it going, and I mean that in itself is a testament to how good they are. Because I think if a band can stick around after not releasing anything and still be big enough that they can support Blink-182 on tour. It says a lot about the quality of the work that they put out. So, yeah, number 10.
Yeah, I respect it. I respect it. Number 9 for me is Good Charlotte.
Oh, okay.
So, Good Charlotte, I didn't have them in my top 10 pop punk albums. And maybe that was a bit of a mistake because when I was looking into this and I was looking into, I can't even remember the name of it off the top of my head, The Young and the Hopeless.
Yeah.
That is such a massive anthem.
Oh.
I didn't even mean to do that.
Oh, yeah, but it's good.
I actually didn't even mean to do it.
It's good, though.
It is, but mainly because of the anthem. And I think that song is one of the probably top 10 pop punk songs of all time in terms of everyone, even that's not a fan of the genre, knows that. Mm-hmm. And that album was absolutely massive. Obviously, Yellow Card, in my opinion, maybe a bit similar to, not Yellow Card, Good Charlotte, maybe a bit similar to Yellow Card, don't have the best overall discography, but that first project earns him a place again. Sometimes it's all you need is one classic album, and it's meant even now in recent years they've headlined Slam Dunk, they still get high billings at any festival they play at. So I think that just one good album is enough for them to get a place on my list. But
definitely, I think they did a good job of blurring because their image was very emo-y, very eyeliner, and I know that was the style of pop punk at the time, but I think they brought in a bit of it was a kind of a hip-hop vibe in The Young and the Hopeless as an album as a whole, because even the anthem has got that intro that's a bit, it's a bit breakdowny, kind of like, and there's like a bit of scratching in there, maybe. I can't quite remember entirely, but I think they did a good job of blending three genres that were all very popular at the time and making a phenomenal album. And like you say, that album in itself stands the test of time. So,
and then Boys and Girls is a big banger as well.
Yes, yeah.
This is what I mean though. This album from top to bottom is just fantastic, and I don't want to dwell on Good Charlotte for too long because, as I said, I actually think that the discography is not the greatest, but 9th
in the rankings of
9th
pop punk. I think they deserve a mention. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So my 9th. Now this might surprise you with how high up they are because I don't know if you'll have included them or put them at any point in your list. My 9th is going to be Paramore.
Oh.
Yeah, so I've decided to put Paramore at number 9 because the influence that they've had cannot be understated. You know, they with them being a female-fronted band, they're the only female-fronted band in my entire list, which in itself says a lot because that's a very impressive feat to achieve. They've that in turn has helped bring a lot more females into the pop-punk genre as a whole and has kind of, I think, molded a lot of bands in the future. So you have people like Willow, Pink Pantheress, Billie Eilish. They've all stated that Hayley Williams was a big inspiration for them growing up.
Massive icon.
They saw her doing all this, all this great stuff that they'd only seen men do up until that point. And, it's helped them get into making the music that they've made. And it hasn't just led the way to them making pop punk. Obviously, you got Willow that she's made quite a bit of pop punk, not entirely. But it's influenced them in other ways as well. Now, the reason why I've had to put them up at number 9 is because the first 3 albums, I think, are undoubtedly 100% pop punk. They've kind of had a strong lean towards more indie influences on the more recent albums.
And even there was some more just pop songs like Hard Times and stuff. It's just like a pop song.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, so I think they've kind of moved away from pop punk as a whole. And I mean, the last couple of projects, they're not even in that realm anymore. But Riot was a fucking phenomenal album. That in itself is enough to give them a place on this list. And I think we'll find that with a lot of these artists is that they will have released that one seminal album that's just done so much for them. It's just put them on a great place on the map, and they've just gone from strength to strength after that. You had like Misery Business, That's What You Get, Crush, Crush, Crush. All 3 massive songs. And, I think Misery Business, like you were saying about the anthem, top 10 pop punk tracks.
Oh, definitely. Everyone knows that track. Yeah. It's such a banger as well.
Such a banger.
It's one of those I don't get bored of. Do you know, sometimes you overhear a song. I don't overhear Misery Business. I still enjoy it every time, unless it's the Machine Gun Kelly cover.
Oh, God.
Then I do not enjoy it.
Machine Gun Kelly cover is
he should have been in my list.
Yeah, he should have been. Yeah, right at the fucking bottom.
Well, no, I completely agree with Paramore. Big shout.
Yeah. Decent.
So, my first 2 picks have been artists where I've said, well, it's really on one album. The next pick, I think it's on their entire discography. I actually don't think they have a bad album, and it's Neck Deep.
Ooh, okay.
So, in my opinion, and I actually don't think there's much debate around this, Neck Deep are the best British pop punk band in history.
Yeah.
There's not really any question around it. But when you think about the roots of pop punk and how based in America it was, and a lot of the lyrics and jokes and stuff throughout a lot of the bigger artists' albums are all very Americanized. Neck Deep have done fantastically well to infiltrate that scene and create a massive audience. They're selling out tours in the US now. They've been co-signed by Blink-182. They supported Blink in America. They're headlining Slam Dunk, etc. So Neck Deep, for me, are a bit of a phenomenon because it just doesn't happen. There's no other British band that have come close to where they're at. And honestly, every single album is special in its own right. The first couple are a little bit more heavy, and then they went on a run of 2 albums where it was The Peace and the Panic and Life's Not Out to Get You. Both of them incredible pop punk albums through and through, no question about genre. A couple of maybe slightly heavier tracks on there, but that's kind of where they established themselves. And then they took a step back with, I don't actually know what the title of this is. I don't want to get it wrong again. All distortions are intentional.
Yes. Come on.
Yes.
Come on.
Yeah, for record, I've called it international before and been slammed on the internet. And then recently they've released a self-titled Neck Deep, which has just gone back to the pop punk roots. But I enjoy every single one. It's rare that happens for a band. They've got December featuring Mark Hoppus.
Yeah.
That's massive to get one of the biggest icons in the genre on a song. He must know how good they are. And that was a couple of years before they even went on tour together. So, you know, it's massive in itself. They've done songs with Busted, etc. Just Neck Deep. I wonder where the ceiling is for them, because obviously pop punk isn't as big as it used to be. They were really unlucky actually with their last album. They released it in the same week as Green Day, so they got number 2 in the UK to Green Day.
Yeah.
It's like, that's a bit insulting, isn't it? When it's
that's unfair.
Probably their icons and it happens to be the same release week. But yeah, just representing the UK well, and I hope they continue growing and the next album could be fantastic. Obviously, recently they've done one anyway. Looking forward to seeing them at Leeds Fest twice this year.
I think one thing that stands out for me with Neck Deep as well is their album covers.
Oh, yeah.
Their album covers, even though they weren't massive, the one that comes to mind instantly is the one with the beaten up face on it. The kind of like Fallout drawn, kind of like cartoony style face. And that in itself, I remember when they weren't even big, and I'd seen that album cover a couple of times, and it was just burnt into my memory because it is great album cover.
Well, they've got this cartoony art style that's just constant throughout. The name of the band is always big and in a massive font in capitals, and it's always kind of drawn stuff. Other than one album, which is the one that everyone doesn't like, but the rest of it fits a nice theme, and it was nice to see. Yeah, there's actually a Neck Deep vinyl there.
That one's really memorable as well. It's just the title. The way that they put Neck Deep so prominently on all of their album titles, I think, is really good.
I had to double check I got the names right then of The Peace and the Panic and Life's Not Out to Get You, because I wasn't sure, but it was them 2
Life's
albums.
Not Out to Panic.
Yeah, like I hate reading album names. I always mess it up. I've been scarred by the internet. Anyway, Tim, that's enough on Neck Deep. What is your number 8?
So number 8, we're coming in with one that is not going to be on your list, but I have a great reason to put it there, and it's Bowling for Soup.
Oh, you can get fucked.
Why?
Oh my God.
Why?
I've actually had enough.
Bowling for Soup are a lot of people's favourite pop punk band. And I think you underestimate how much impact they've had on pop punk fans. Maybe not on pop punk artists, but on fans in general. You cannot deny that they are prominent.
You cannot put Bowling for Soup as a better pop punk band with more influence than Paramore.
I'm not saying more influence.
No, but you've got them, the best pop punk artists of all time. Bowling for Soup are not a better pop punk artist than Paramore.
Do you not think?
No.
Do you not think?
Do you actually think that?
Yeah. I think in my rank, well, that's why I put them above them.
Oh,
that's why I put them above them. The reason why Paramore got number 9, like I say, is because they veered away from pop punk. They only really had those 3 initial releases that were in the category of pop punk.
3 fantastic pop punk albums.
Yes.
That's more than...
Yes, I know, but they've moved away from it now. Bowling for Soup have been pop punk through and through. They've been pop punk since day one. Oh. They're still pop punk now. They're still putting out absolute classics of songs. You know, you've got... And also... Grammy nominated. There's not many pop punk bands that can say that they're Grammy nominated, is there? So let's just address that right now. Everybody else, are they Grammy nominated?
I've actually had enough of you and your relationship with Bowling for Soup.
Why?
I've had enough of it.
They put on one of the best live shows of any pop punk band out there. They genuinely do. everybody will agree with that.
Bro, I cannot.
Have you ever seen Bowling for Soup live?
Yes.
Have you?
Yes.
And did you think the show was great?
Yeah, they were all right.
They were fantastic.
They were all right.
You're lying. They were fantastic.
No,
you
can't. No.
Repeat after me. They were fantastic.
No, they were just all right.
They were fantastic.
Bowling for Soup live were not better than Paramore live.
Are you kidding?
No way.
Yes.
Oh, you are off your cracker. I've had enough.
The live show that Bowling for Soup put on is way more interactive than Paramore's. I don't even care because you've got song 1985. Girl All the Bad Guys Want.
Yeah, you've
Them
said
in themselves are absolutely huge.
You can say anything here, but this is actually the most criminal take you've ever come out. You can't.
Not.
You can't defend this one.
I can defend this one. I'll defend this one to the fucking grave, brother.
You can't say Paramore at 9th and then put Bowling for Soup at 8th.
I can.
That's not
What
on.
metric are you putting this on?
Any metric.
Any metric.
Any.
So you're telling me that Good Charlotte haven't had more impact than Neck Deep?
Maybe.
Maybe.
Well,
Are you kidding?
They did initially, yes, but Neck Deep have, in the new wave of pop punk, they are practically the biggest band. Other than Machine Gun Kelly.
Yellow Card. Saying Neck Deep have had more influence than Yellow Card.
Well, Neck Deep have got a way better discography though. Bowling for Soup do not have a better discography than Paramore.
We're taking in a lot of metrics here. We're not just taking in these have got a better song, so they're number one.
Paramore's 3 pop punk albums are better than Bowling for Soup's entire discography.
I'm sorry,
put
that's
together.
Just not true. Everyone who's always seen them, everybody that's seen them, says that they're fantastic.
Right, I think we need to...
No.
We need to...
Do you know, I think I've come up with one of the main reasons as to why they are not respected in the same caliber as a lot of other bands are in the pop punk scene. And I think it's because they are just generic looking guys. They're not attractive. They've got they've not really got any features about them that are like Pretty Boy and, they're not really appealing to like an audience of that kind. Jarrett back in the day and Eric Chandler used to be lookers. I will give them that. But they don't really have that appeal going for them. And I genuinely do think that image is that's the only thing I can think of that is the reason why. And don't get me wrong, I think they're all very attractive. But that's the only reason as to why I can't think that they never reached the heights that these other bands have reached. I think 8 is kind. I think that's me because they were going to be higher. They were going to be higher. If you hear the other ones and think of who these could have beaten out, you'd be even more annoyed. So be thankful that they're at number 8 because they were going to be higher.
It's criminal.
Number 7, Joe. I'm not, listen.
Roger.
If we're going to talk about pop punk, Bowling for Soup are going to come up. You knew it was going to happen. You must have known this was going to happen.
They kind of remind me of ska more than pop punk.
Oh my fucking God. Yeah, because you don't know what genres are. Number 7.
Number 7 for me is Jimmy Eat World.
Okay.
You can't even hate on that.
No, I'm not going to hate on that. We've moved from the hating. That's it.
I think Jimmy Eat World massively underappreciated actually in the pop punk scene. Obviously, Bleed American gets the respect it deserves and is one of the most influential pop punk albums of all time. But to me, Jimmy Eat World's discography, it maybe moved slightly more to just rock music as opposed to out and out pop punk. But I think that a lot of people will still, and I still class it as pop punk. Yeah, the continuation of their music went on for a long time. The Middle, again, one of those pop punk anthems that everyone rates. Bleed American itself, the track is unbelievable. Mm-hmm. I really like Hey You Me.
Yeah, Hey You Me is really good.
It's like one I could just cry to on a random Thursday night.
Yeah.
Which maybe I shouldn't like it for that reason, but...
I don't know.
Yeah, I do. As far as their whole discography goes, I think Integrity Blues is a really good album as well. A more recent pop punk release, which is quite rare for a lot of these bands to kind of continue on. And then in between Bleed American and Integrity Blues, there was also Futures. So for me, they're the 3 main Jimmy Eat World albums that people need to check out. I'm sure they already have if they're a fan of the genre. But for that reason, that's why they get higher. Because a lot of people say, well, Good Charlotte, their album was bigger than Bleed American. Yeah, but the following albums weren't as big,
I don't know
weren't as good even.
I don't even know if that's that true, to be
fair.
but
I could imagine that argument being made.
I get that, yeah.
But yeah, and also, interesting fact, when I was researching this, I found out about an amazing looking pop punk tour that happened in 2002. So it was called the Pop Disaster Tour, and it featured Blink-182, Green Day, Jimmy Eat World, and Saves the Day.
Oh, that's a fucking lineup, that.
I'd be so gassed to see that.
Yeah. Where was that?
Around the world.
Around the world?
Yeah.
A global tour?
I think most of it was America, and I think they did some other dates. I don't know if it made it to the UK, but
still, regardless,
that's sick.
mega.
I'd rather see that than the Hella Mega tour.
I was going to say that's Hella Mega right there. That's fucking amazing.
Tim, I'm worried about you now, mate.
So
I'm really worried.
The reason why I haven't gone into too much on Jimmy Eat World is because my number 7 is Jimmy Eat World. Come on, we've actually agreed on something. So the reason why Jimmy Eat World are coming in number 7, the main thing is, like you were saying, they kind of veered away a little bit, but I'd still class it as pop punk towards the end of the day. They're an inspiration to so many bands. Jim Adkins himself, I don't know if you've seen when we were young and they were interviewing people. Every time they were interviewing somebody and Jim Adkins walked past, they always just stopped mid-interview and they're like, sorry, I've just seen Jimmy. I've just seen him there. That's him there. And they all have such great respect for Jimmy Eat World. And the amount of pop punk bands that reference Jimmy Eat World in their lyrics, I didn't realize there was so many.
Is there?
There's so many songs. So you've got Constantine by Something Corporate. They say, it's to Jimmy Eat World and those nights in my car. Taxi Driver by Gym Class Heroes. Just throw on this Coheed and Fall Out Boy meets Girl, Jimmy Eat World. Skin Deep by Real Friends. I've got this Lonely Night in Jimmy Eat World. I never had you and you told me I never did. We've got Solo and Chewy by The Wonder Years.
Oh, yeah.
Talking about Arizona as the airport at Sky Harbor. I wonder that's what the last song on Clarity is about.
So,
talking about Clarity.
Jimmy Eat World have got it.
Moose Blood on Bukowski. They talk about it on there. And yeah, like you're saying, the Bleed American album in itself, I think, is the prominent album for Jimmy Eat World. And that's the main reason why a lot of people got into him. A lot of people enjoy their music. They are one of the forefathers of pop punk. You know, they cannot be denied in the list. They have to be in the top 10. And honestly, they could have dropped Bleed American, dipped, and just toured off that. You know, like a Lauryn Hill style. They genuinely could have. That album was big enough in itself that they could have just coasted off that. But they didn't. They then went on to release consistently good projects. And that's why they're in the top 10 pop punk bands of all time.
Big ups to Jimmy Eat World.
Big ups.
Number 6. We're getting to crunch time. Baby. I think this one might surprise you that I've included them.
It's bomb soup.
No.
Oh, fuck.
If I had them above all rest after giving you that lip, it'd have been game over.
I would have loved it.
Number 6 for me is Fall Out Boy.
No way.
So, we saw Fall Out Boy live, and I actually didn't think they put in an amazing performance.
No, they didn't.
But in terms of overall impact on pop punk and their first couple of albums, wow, were they massive. They were
phenomenal.
It's weird for me because I feel like Fall Out Boy don't get brought up in the conversation as much. In comparison to the next ones that are coming in the higher in the list, you never really hear their name. And I think it's because in the later albums, up to the last one, they really switched to pop. You know, like Centuries and stuff was just a pop track. So I think a lot of pop punk fans kind of disowned them. But from what I see, like the newest album is really good.
Yeah,
it's
decent. It's decent.
It was received really well, critically acclaimed. But Take This to Your Grave and From Under the Cork Tree will be, if you ask a lot of pop punk bands and artists, their biggest inspirations, 100%. Who was it? Was it Knucklepuck who said that From Under the Cork Tree was their favourite pop punk album ever?
Yeah.
So many artists reference Fall Out Boy and just give them a lot of credit for the overall impact on their music. Obviously, Sugar We're Going Down is... I think every band we mention is just going to be one...
Thanks for the memories as well.
Yeah, thanks for the memories. Yeah. This is what Fall Out Boy definitely deserve a place, and I've got Dance Dance as well as a massive tune. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know why they don't get as much mention by pop punk fans. I guess it's just because they changed a little bit.
I think it's because their initial releases were very different to what they're releasing now.
Yeah. Well, no, but the last album was pretty similar, but there was a 3 in between or something where it changed massively.
Yeah.
That's it.
Okay, so
Fall Out Boy number 6.
Again, why I didn't go into too much detail on that is because for number 6 I've got Fall Out Boy.
This is mad.
So
if you didn't pick Bowling for Soup, this would be great.
Yeah, it would be. Wait, why am I agreeing? It would be great for us. That's what I'm going to say. So, Fall Out Boy, they fell out of pop punk in 2013 with the, what was it called? It was Save Rock and Roll album, which was the one with the 2 kids on the front of it walking. And that album was them basically saying, okay, look, we're moving away from this now. We don't want to do pop punk anymore. Maybe not that they don't want to do pop punk anymore, but maybe they found a more viable way to go with their music. More like Fall Off Boy. I wrote that down. I made a note. I made a note to say that.
Hellish.
I just wanted to clarify that I had purposefully come up with that. So the first two albums, like you were saying, Take This to Your Grave, From Under the Cork Tree, absolutely fantastic. I enjoyed Infinity on a High, and without it, we wouldn't have got the absolute banger of Thanks for the Memories. That's the album with the little sheep on the front. It's cool. Yeah. They're huge in America and in the UK, but I think the reason why they're not spoken about as much in the pop punk scene is because they never really broke mainland Europe in terms of pop punk bands that they would be listening to. They really are only predominant in America and the UK as like a huge band. They're obviously big in other countries because they're just a big band. But I mean, in terms of the impact that they had on our culture, from what I've seen, it didn't transcend across to a lot of other places. And I think that might be why they're perhaps not spoken about as much. And also, Pete Wentz, I mean, the whole band kind of did, but Pete Wentz himself really played into the celebrity side of things and really pushed himself into becoming a celebrity. And that's why everybody knows Pete Wentz's name. You know what I mean? Like, he just became one of those people. And I think in turn with that, he decided, you know, our band's going to have to take a new trajectory here because we're getting bigger than the genre that we're in. I think they felt like they were maybe not getting too good for the genre or too big for the genre, but maybe that their fan base was expanding in such a rate and to such a wide variety of people that they figured, you know, if we go down more of a pop vibe kind of track, we'll have a greater success there.
And I mean, it was true.
That's why I can only put them in at number 6.
I mean, super valid, mate. Super valid. Yeah. Top 5, baby.
Top 5. Here we go.
These are the big boys.
These are the big boys.
The first of them for me is All Time Low.
Ooh.
So, similar to Neck Deep for me, All Time Low, not quite as big as Fall Out Boy, and arguably not even as big as Jimmy Eat World to a lot of people. But I think that every single album has at least 4 or 5 banger pop punk songs on. And they're one of the few bands that have never veered away from it. They've got a couple of pop songs where they've had features, etc. But every single album would be classed as pop punk, and they've been going for decades. I just think they're incredible. Obviously, there was the first couple of albums where it's Nothing Personal and Don't Panic.
I just want to say how much I love Don't Panic. Every time it comes up, I love that album.
Do you know what? Very similar art style to Neck Deep on that as well.
Yeah.
On the Don't Panic cover.
There was Don't Panic... It's something else, and they added a little bit more of a cartoon.
Don't Panic, It's Not Over, I think it was.
Something like that, yeah. And they just added to it there, but yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
So for me, All Time Low, it's a really simple one. I think the influence that they've had as well, you hear a lot of people mention them. They've brought some like smaller bands on tour a few times. Obviously, Dear Maria, Count Me In. Every band, I'm just going to keep saying, a massive, huge... mega pop punk song they've had.
I was saying Dear Maria. Like fucking Tia Maria.
What?
I just love the way that it came out. You said it fine. All I could think of was Tia Maria.
All right, I thought I said it wrong.
No.
But for me, my favourite all-time low song is actually Weightless.
Yeah.
Because maybe it's not your weekend.
Is that Manage Me, I'm a Mess?
Yeah.
Such
a big tune.
Yeah.
But again, it's even up to the 2020 album, Wake Up Sunshine. I loved that. And
did, yeah.
I've still got a lot of those songs on my playlist, and it's very rare. Obviously, Blink have come back and done it with the latest projects one more time, but their older stuff I don't think was as good a cemented pop punk album as Wake Up Sunshine. So, All Time Low, Consistency Kings.
Blink's old stuff wasn't as good as...
No, it's in like California and Nine.
Okay,
at that point,
yes.
When I say cemented pop
era.
punk. Yeah. So,
okay.
Yeah, All Time Low, just up there for me. I don't think... I don't know. I think a lot of people would probably include them in this list, to be honest.
I think they're valid to be in that list. I do think that. I'm just going to say it out right now. They are not in my list. But I think I would have them as an honourable mention. Right. You know what I mean? So I'm not against that. I think.
But where would you then pit All Time Low against Good Charlotte, Jimmy Eat World, etc.?
So All Time Low, Jimmy Eat World, I'd put higher than All Time Low personally because I think they've had a bigger impact, a wider impact. But All Time Low... I don't know, it's hard to say. I didn't include Good Charlotte, but I feel like I'd put them higher than Good Charlotte.
Okay.
And I think the reason for that would be because, like you're saying, they are just through and through pop punk, and they are a great band. They are a great band. There's not many other bands out there that have been as consistently pop punk as All Time Low, and I think they are underrated when people are talking about bands that are, big in pop punk. I think a lot of people forget about it. And also a lot of elitists don't like them because they're kind of like pretty boy. And
the image is...
Yeah, that's how I mean, yeah. But then that's also something that lends to their success, I feel. So, it swings and roundabouts.
Top 5, Tim. Who's 5th for you?
Number 5, we're coming in with the Sum 41. Woo! Woohoo! So, I don't think you're going to argue with this at all. Sum 41, great band. Just fantastic through and through. Some of the biggest pop punk bops in history. Cannot be denied. We've got In Too Deep, of course. Fat Lip, which there's plenty of pop punk club nights out there called Fat Lip now. Like that is just a great track, and it cemented its place in, if not music history.
It's in the archives, man.
It really is. It's just through and through a great tune. Still Waiting, Hell Song. The music is a bit all over the place, though, is something that I've come to realize in terms of they've got a lot of influences. They've got pop punk, obviously, but then they've got heavy rock. They've even got metal. They kind of veer here, there, and everywhere, and that is one of the main things that I like about them as a band. And like I said in my when we did our top pop punk albums, they are one of my favorite pop punk bands of all time. So a lot of it, I think, again, is a test to Derek's voice is a bit more raspy as well. It's not quite as whiny. It is kind of in that whiny side, but it's a bit more powerful, I think is the word. I don't know how to describe it, but there's something about it that's different to a lot of other pop punk bands. And I think it sets them apart. And also the ferocity of the music being so fucking...
It's always such high tempo.
It gets you really going. And yeah, it really makes me want to punch a wall, basically. It just gets you fucking... You know what I mean?
All right, Kyle.
So the thing that put them at number 5, though, is that they're slightly lacking in... The only way I can describe it is charm. That's the only way I can describe it. They're lacking in charm in comparison to what I've got in my top 4. I wanted to say I don't want to say who my top 4 are, but in comparison to the next 4, there's something that they're just lacking a very... I don't know what it is.
Strange to me that you put Bowling for Soup in and say that people just don't like them because they don't look good enough, and then put some 40 in and say they can't get higher because they don't look good enough.
I never said they didn't look good enough.
That's what charm is.
That is not what charm is at all. No, I'm saying there's something about the band. There's something, I don't know what it is, but there's something missing.
You're
I'm
a horrible man.
I'm not even saying it. If it was their appearance, I would have said it was their appearance.
Yeah. Okay, well, shall I go on to number 4?
I think you should.
It is Paramore.
Oh.
So I feel like you didn't think I'd have them in the list anywhere.
No, I didn't. No.
So for me... 4. So you mentioned a lot of these points already. I think one of the main things for me is Paramore are the only big, to this day, like massive, world-known female-fronted pop punk band.
Yeah.
And to be honest, as far as female-fronted bands as a whole go, I don't really think there's any bigger than Paramore, just full stop. Bands that are actually bands.
Yeah, I'm thinking.
Like
there's Pretty Reckless.
They're nowhere near as big.
No, I'm trying to think of female bands. I'm not saying they're bigger than them.
Some people, like, there's some other big ones.
Hailstorm.
They're not, Hailstorm, Evanescence.
Ooh.
But they're not as big as Paramore.
Evanescence.
Nah.
No, they're not as big as Paramore, but
they're big.
They're fucking big.
Yeah.
I forgot about them.
So for me, that puts them in a different league because they fully carved the way and are still at the forefront of that. If you think of a female-fronted pop punk band, it's them.
Yeah.
There's no one else, really.
Yeah.
So they're in there for that. Also, I can put Jimmy Eat World in and Good Charlotte and Yellow Card. Good Charlotte and Yellow Card's really off one album. Paramore had 3 top-tier pop punk albums in a row. So if I can put them in off 1 in the top 10, I can fit Paramore in at 4 with 3 banger albums. I think it's also maybe slightly biased because I also quite like some of the newer tunes where they went in a newer direction.
Yeah.
So I'm appreciative of the band's work as a whole. But those pop punk albums were massive. You mentioned a lot of it already, but Riot in itself is just one of the best pop punk albums ever made. Includes Misery Business, which is just instant. All I Wanted for me is an incredible song.
Oh, forgot about that track.
Woo. The vocals in that, not only on the recording, but also live when Hayley does it, it's hard to match. You don't see many female vocalists, especially in bands with such heavy touring schedules, probably ripped the voice up for years. All I Wanted, the notes that she can hit, mental. Yeah. So, yeah, Paramore, top tier artist. And as you said, They changed the genre. So for me, number 4.
See, I can't argue with that. I cannot argue with the placement. I've given my justifications as to why. My main justification being that they veered away from pop punk. That was my main justification for putting them so high up. But I think 4 is a good spot for them. Yeah.
Gang. What's your number 4, Tim?
My number 4, I'm going to come in with a band that you won't have, which is The Offspring. Now, I knew that you would know that I would have these in my list, because of course I would. And this was a difficult one for me because I couldn't decide between 5 and 4. I couldn't decide whether I wanted Sum 41 at number 4 or number 5, and then The Offspring. So I was kind of umming and ahhing between the two, but I've decided, you know what, Offspring are going to just pip out Sum 41. But it was close. It was close. It was very close. So these are just a powerhouse in the music industry, I feel. Everybody knows who they are. Even if people don't know who they are, they know 3 or 4 tracks by them, by name almost. A lot of punk fans liked their earlier stuff from the early 90s when they first came out. And then there was mid-90s when they came out with Smash, which to this day is the number 1 best-selling independently released record.
Wow, that's impressive.
Which is very impressive. I think it's got nearly 12 million sales now or something like that, which is fucking amazing. Yeah, so I think a lot of people underestimate how good this band was out the gate. They leaned to the pop stuff in the mid to late 90s, early 2000s. And that kind of put off a lot of the people that got into initially, because they were a lot more like Descendants and that kind of music.
Like a punk band.
It were more punky. Yeah. Smash kind of veered them towards pop punk, and then released it like Conspiracy of One, and albums after that, it all became very pop punk. And there were songs on there like Pretty Fly where they were clearly going for a pop feel to them, while still staying true to the roots. I can't say that they ever veered fully away. Self-Esteem was one of the songs that brought 90s punk to the mainstream, along with, there was a few other songs around that time that we'll get into later. But this was one of those tracks that a lot of mainstream people never heard punk before in the 90s. This was the one that they saw. They saw it on MTV. It got a lot of play.
They've got a really iconic logo.
Yes, they do. Yeah. They're just a great band. They are just a great band. What set them apart from like all the other bands at that time was the fact that they were independent initially. And I think that because they didn't have the backing of a big, like a big record label, they didn't have the advertising that a big record label would provide them with. So they kind of fell to the wayside because nobody was giving them the time of day. So they weren't really getting the radio play, they weren't getting the television showings that a lot of these other bands were getting until they started to pick up on major labels, which is when they really took off and went absolutely massive. But to have that many sales on an independently released album, that's fucking insane. That's just, I don't think that's ever really happened before. And I don't know if it'll happen again with them being number 1 still.
So pre-recording this podcast, I said to you, there's a band in there that I probably should have, but I just don't really like them. It's The Offspring.
I knew it was. As soon as you said it.
I get it. They're massive, and I know how big some of the songs are, and anyone that's really in the scene really likes them. But for some reason, do you know when you just don't click with a band?
Yeah.
I just can't get down with The Offspring.
Yeah.
It gives. There's no particular reason. I can't put them on my playlist. It jars my brain a bit.
No, I get that. That's fair enough.
Yeah, massive.
This
Definitely
is another one of those bands that they could have released the album Smash and just dipped, and that would have been it.
Then they could have been.
They could have just lived off that again, like Lauryn Hill. Just release one album and just say that's it. We're going off that now. But they didn't. They went on to release consistently good album. Like I liked all the music, to be honest with you. There's a couple of mid albums, not miss albums. But I still really enjoy.
What have they done anything recently?
Relatively recently.
Is that any good?
It's still good. It's still The Offspring. Right. Dexter's a fucking genius, the front man. But yeah, so they definitely deserve a spot up there. I know the reason why you've not got them in your list, but I think that's a big L to take that you have not got The Offspring anywhere in the top 10 pop.
Well, I've got them in my honourables. I only got like 2 honourables, and I literally made this list earlier, and I had them in it. And I looked when I was looking into the songs and stuff, and I thought I just don't really like them, and I don't want to talk about them.
I think fairs. Yeah.
No, I was like, I'm not going to make it up. I just don't rate
your
them.
omission of The Offspring, the level that you think me having Bone for Soup in mind of rogueness is that. But I think the Bone for Soup deserve top 10.
It's not the same thing, because I openly admit that The Offspring should be in there, but I just don't like them, so I don't want to talk about them. Whereas you actually think Bowling for Soup should be in there, which is wild.
Of course they should.
Yeah, anyway.
Of course they should.
Oh, this is just going to be a theme
again.
now.
We're not doing that again.
Top 3, baby.
Yeah, here we go.
Top 3.
Here we go. I'm expecting these to be almost identical.
Yeah.
I think it will be.
It will be.
I think it will be.
Well, maybe not, because... Anyway, number 3 for me is Sum 41.
Oh, okay. Wow.
What?
Nothing.
Why does that shock you?
Because I know who 2 and 1 are, and I've just realised that you've not got somebody in your list.
Have I forgotten someone really obvious?
Yeah, I think so. But carry on.
Anyway.
We'll see.
Yeah, Sum 41, All Killer No Fear, into Does This Look Infected, into Chuck, is just the maddest run of albums ever. That solidified them as one of the best pop punk bands in history at that moment. One after the other, with classics on each album, different sounds, but all kind of relying on the pop punk theme throughout them all. It's just incredible. Iconic music videos that even I remember seeing growing up, even after they were no longer massive as such. You saw their music videos everywhere. Still headline festivals, loved by fans, good enough to cover for Chester in Linkin Park at Leeds Fest. Sum 41 are a top tier band, and I just think that I don't really need to say much more than that. The third on the list, you covered them, all the bangers, you know, Fat Lip, etc. Just unbelievable. And third,
phenomenal. Yeah.
Who's your third?
So in at number 3 for me, we've got Newfound Glory. So Newfound Glory have to be in the top 3 pop punk bands of all time. They have to be up there. Maybe top 5. I could take top 5, but personally for me, top 3 easily. Newfound Glory. What?
You've been done by TikTok comments, man.
Why?
We've spoken about pop punk for 5 years. We've been to multiple pop punk gigs.
Correct.
Seen loads of bands, sent each other music countless times. You've never mentioned Newfound Glory.
I've seen Newfound Glory like 4 times.
You've never brought them up to me, not once.
How do you mean? Why do you always do this? Why do you always come out with some fucking bollocks like they?
Nah.
How does that negate their place in the list?
I mean, I know that they're quite good, but third.
Yeah.
They're the third best pop punk band of all time.
I reckon so. I reckon in influence and also in their discography, they are one of the only bands that has consistently stayed entirely pop punk, album after album after album after album.
I can't wait for you to have Simple Plan in second.
I'd argue that the top 3 would be more of a Mount Rushmore, where they're all equally in line with each other, rather than it being, you know, like an actual solidified top 1. I think that there is like a little Mount Rushmore going on where the top 3 bands.
I've got
they're
just
all sat
number
up
1
there. Oh, you think?
Yeah.
You think?
Yeah.
Definitive.
Easy.
That's ballsy, though. That's ballsy. So these have got the deepest catalogue of a band that can be considered totally pop punk, like I was saying. They've never really strayed from their roots like a lot of the great bands did. You can't deny that a lot of the big pop punk bands have strayed from their roots almost entirely.
Yeah.
This band, album after album after album, has stayed pop punk. And I think that's one of the reasons why they need to be spoke about in such high regard. Because this is the pop punk band, I would say. They've never released an album that wasn't pop punk. And I think that's really hard to say for a lot of big bands nowadays. The longevity on them is fantastic. They've stood the test of time. Their live shows are great. I think Hayley Williams was married to one of them for like a year, and then they broke up because of his infidelity, which to me is fucking insane. Because if you've bagged Hayley Williams, what the fuck are you doing?
Bro,
that person better have been somebody good.
He fumbled the biggest bag.
Who would you like? Who would you sleep with over Hayley Williams?
Just a scumbag.
That's absolutely insane. Anyway,
not surprised they've made it on your list.
They're still writing good music late into their career, which again is a bit of a rarity for bigger bands that have been going for like 20 plus years. Sticks and Stones was a cultural phenomenon. Like that just was. At the time when that was released, that hit a lot of people's radars. It got loads of radio play. MTV was playing it.
Ain't even as good as the Jamie T Sticks and Stones. Carry on.
Oh, I was like, that's not pop punk. What the fuck? Yeah, I get you. Yeah. And then they released an album last year, which was called "Make the Most of It," which, whilst it's a bit softer, is still pop punk. And I think as a band, the reason why they're so high up on my list is because they are just through and through pop punk. They can't be denied as the pop punk band, in my opinion.
Okay, let me play devil's advocate then. So they've been consistently pop punk. That's good. Are there any of their albums better than a lot of the ones you've mentioned previously? Like, as an individual, have they got an album that is like better than Riot or better than Bleed American?
Sticks and Stones, I'd argue, is a very, very high up album. I would argue. I wouldn't say it's better than Bleed American for me. I would say it's better than Riot for me, personally. But the impact it had, maybe not as appropriate as Riot. But again, my list has kind of been on, are they pop punk now? Did they stick to their roots? Which is the reason why Fall Out Boy was so high up the list. And Paramore, again, was so high up the list as well, because they're just not who they were back in the day. Whereas Newfound Glory, through and through, from strength to strength, just staying in pop punk.
Fair. I'm not arguing.
That's a field. Yeah, thank you.
I'm not arguing.
Thank you for coming out here saying, oh, you never mentioned them before, blah, blah, blah. There's lots of fucking bands I don't mention to you because I go, he's not going to listen to these ever. There's reasons for that, Mr. Man.
All right, mate. Anyway, it's good to know we've got the same top two. Unless you have really
have we got the same top two, though?
Yeah, we've got to at this point.
Yeah, we have to. If we haven't,
that's a problem.
We could actually have an actual fist fight, I think.
The second best pop punk band of all time is Green Day. Green Day shaped the genre with Dookie. Many people attribute pop punk becoming a thing as a whole to Dookie. Also, in the 2000s, they massively repopularized pop punk with American Idiot. That album was everywhere, and it made the genre become number one chart topping, and Green Day were at the forefront of both of those kind of revolutions. The reason they don't get first for me is because a lot of their older work is really good, but I feel like they've had some big duds as well. Ooh. In more recent years, a lot of their albums have not been anywhere near as good as the quality of previous work. So that's why they don't get number one. But that does not change the fact. Some of the big bangers that they've had throughout the year, obviously American Idiot in itself, Basket Case, I'm going to use one of your words, it's a seminal pop punk song. Everyone that likes the genre knows about Basket Case. Boulevard of Broken Dreams, a bit more of a sing-along, really fun. There's the version that's with Holiday as well, which is fantastic. But if you look at Green Day, are one of the few bands in the world, never mind just pop punk bands, if you look at their top 10 songs on any streaming service, on YouTube, whatever you look at, most fans of rock music will know 8 of them. Mm-hmm. Genuinely, it is absolutely wild. There's just so many that are so good, and they've consistently toured. They're one of the best live bands as a whole. A lot of pop punk artists aren't as good live as they are on the recordings, and I think it's down to that whiny voice, and you know, a lot of them are kind of delinquents a lot of the time. But Green Day live, massive. Sell out stadiums around the world, have done for years. They put in a good performance. You sent me the other day on the latest set list is 30 plus songs. Heavyweights of the game. Number 2.
Number 2 for me, Green Day. Of course it is. Of course it is. Because they're just not as good as Simple Plan. So they have to come in at number 2. So the American Idiot cycle is the biggest that a pop punk band arguably has ever been. It genuinely is. Like you were saying there, when that was released, you couldn't go anywhere without hearing radio play. You couldn't have anybody in your school would have heard it. Even the people that shunned the people that were like more emo-y, you know, that emo sect in school, they loved that shit. But then the people shunning them, they loved that shit as well. It should have bonded. It didn't, but it should have bonded people at that point. And modern pop punk wouldn't look the way that it does now without Green Day doing what they did back then. In the, like you were saying with Dookie, absolutely fantastic album. And then American Idiot as well. Those 2 albums in themselves, fucking insane. Dookie changed the rock scene from grunge to pop punk. Like, it just came in out of nowhere, and it all went from grungy, like, depressy kind of sounds to this fun, happy party, skater kind of pop punky. And I think the other thing that it kind of tied into was, like, the whole uptick of extreme sports, like BMXing and snowboarding. It really was around that time, and that music just lent itself to that kind of stuff so well.
It was like a whole new wave of music videos and MTV and everyone getting behind it, and Jackass and everything, it all tied together. It was that like 90s, early 2000s vibe.
And the political message that they carried through on American Idiot was, you know, that stuck to their punk roots as well. And you get some fucking, I guarantee there'll be people out there that will say Green Day aren't pop punk because they're political. You can't be political and be pop punk. And I just think bollocks. That's bollocks. That's nothing to do with it, in my opinion. But, you know, each to their own. Anyway, I wanted to talk about the Saviours Tour because, like you just mentioned there, they did their first night. They've been doing this at festivals, but nobody knew if they were going to carry it to the Saviours Tour that's happening. They play one song that's off a new one that says "Thank God for America" or something. I don't know what it is. I didn't really listen to the newer stuff. But they are then playing Dookie in full from top to bottom, followed by American Idiot in full from top to bottom. And then to top it off, the songs, because I was like, oh, but then that's a great set. I was like, you can't get a better set list than that. But only if they had, you know, Minority in there or Good Riddance. And they're right at the end. So they'll do the first track, they'll do the whole of Dookie, they'll do Bleed American, wrong one, American Idiot, and then they just finish it off with two of their other great tracks, Minority and Good Riddance.
They know what they're doing. This is what I'm saying live. It's hard to beat Green Day.
I don't think there's many bands that can get people that excited about playing two albums in full. Mm-hmm. Like, the mass amount of people that are going, and I've got tickets to this fucking tour.
Have you?
Yeah.
Since when?
What do you mean?
Did you get? Oh, you little snake.
Well, I told you about this a long time ago. What do you mean, nah?
No, it's who got you the last Green Day ticket?
You didn't get me it.
I gifted you it, actually.
You didn't gift me it.
Yeah, but there were loads of people.
You don't charge people for a gift, bro.
You do when it's a gift that good.
Yeah, to be fair. Yeah, all right. Yeah.
But yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah, and I'm very looking forward to that.
Yeah, I might get a ticket. Are you standing? Manchester?
Probably seated. Going with the oldies.
Oh, right. Knees are cracking a bit.
Yeah.
Number one. We know who it is.
Should we say it in unison?
3, 2, 1. Blink 182. Yes. Of course it's got to be.
Of course it is.
Blink 182. But I'm actually going to start this on a bit of a negative. Compared to a lot of pop punk bands, Blink 182 have a fair few misses.
They do.
I wasn't a huge fan of Cheshire Cat.
Oh. I thought you meant like fucking California and stuff like that.
I wasn't a huge fan of 9. I wasn't a huge fan of California.
I mean, I like California more than 9.
I like it, but I don't think it's that amazing. Dude Ranch. It's just all right.
Whoa, you're blowing me away here, man.
Hear me out.
I'm hearing
Good singles, but it's not like an amazing album, top to bottom. Whereas...
What do you think of Buddha?
Anyway.
I can't believe I'm hearing this.
They're still number one. Not for those albums. Those albums aren't bad. I'm just saying that they're not as good, and it's hard to compare them to the 4-album run that they had. Enema Estate, Take Off Your Pants and Jacket, self-titled, Blink-182, and Neighbourhoods. One after the other, to go like that. I think that is at the phase of the band where Mark, Tom, and Travis had fully bonded, were together, and were at the peak of their powers. Mm-hmm. And as far as a pop-punk run goes, Enema Estate into Take Off Your Pants and Jacket into self-titled, a lot of people won't include Neighbourhoods in that, and that's fair enough. But just those 3 are 3 of the best pop-punk albums of all time. Some massive bangers throughout them. All the Small Things, I Miss You. And I Miss You is one of those songs where I'll play it to my friends who aren't pop punk fans and they really like it, even if it makes them want to cry.
You love talking about I Miss You. It's your favourite track to talk about.
I've been through
I think this might be the 3rd time you made this point on this podcast.
I've been through some things with I Miss You.
Yeah, sounds it, mate.
It's been a rough couple of years. But honestly, I just think it's just got to be them. Mm-hmm. That run, for me, I've just got a special connection with Blink. I've always liked them. They were the reason I really got into like live music, if you will. I remember when I was like 13 watching their Reading set on BBC and thinking, oh, I'm going to go to that festival one day. And it was because of Blink. The first ever proper iPod I discovered Blink on when I was on my way to America when I was like 14, 15. And then I've just loved them from that point. They can't be beaten. And I don't think most people would really argue it. They might just bring up what I brought up at the start of, there is a few duds. I think the Skibber era, there's a few good songs from there.
I don't think the Skiba era was that bad.
I just don't class it as that Blink.
No, it wasn't. No, I think what they obviously wanted to carry on the Blink name. They wanted to carry on releasing as Blink because they'd formed back and they had a thing going. And then Tom dropped out and they said, "Look, we're not gonna just all split off and do separate bands again. Let's just stay as Blink." I think if they'd have released California in 9 under a band name that wasn't Blink, people would have received it so much better.
But speaking of those alternative bands, we're obviously talking about the top 10 pop punk artists of all time. And I think it's important to consider what they've done as artists. You look at Travis Barker, he has been the front runner for the new wave of pop punk, bringing through Jaden, Kenny Hoopla, kind of bringing back Avril Lavigne, Machine Gun Kelly. He's just worked with countless people, even some smaller like indie bands in the UK. He's done a song with The Hunter, stuff like that. And then Mark Hoppus has always collaborated really well with a lot of pop punk bands. He's featured on a State Champs track. He's featured on a Neck Deep track. He's featured on a Busted track. He's featured on a McFly track. He's featured on a Muck Busted track. He's got a side project with Alex from All Time Low.
Yeah.
And then there's also Plus 44, Boxcar Racer, Angels and Airwaves. It's just like, as artists, no one has done more for the scene than Blink-182.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I've got some points to go on here as well, but I echo every word that you've just said, apart from dissing Cheshire Cat.
I don't hate it. I just think it's not...
Dude Ranch as well. Fucking phenomenal.
Yeah, it's just damn it, though, isn't it, really?
Damn it. Anyway, so them being in American Pie... and also releasing Damn It around that time and just releasing catchy songs that any teenager of the late 90s to early 2000s could relate to was what sent them like stratospheric. They just fucked off. They just went straight up there. Didn't matter what genre they were because the songs were fucking amazing. Anybody could listen to them. And almost everyone liked Blink when they were younger, but for some reason they were just never good enough for the old heads of punk and punk rock and all that stuff because they're like, oh, they're too jokey, they're not taking it seriously, this, that, and the other. And I don't get why you have to limit yourself to only listening to certain types of music within a subgenre because it doesn't, the lyrics aren't quite right and this, that, and the other. If you like how it sounds, listen to it. Don't stop yourself listening to something because they don't talk about the political system in America and how unjust things are in the world. Like, why does that matter? Why do you want to listen to that anyway? I won't get into too much into that. But Damn It started it all. That was the track that really started to take them off. And then What's My Age Again secured it. So Damn It fucking went like this. What's My Age Again? Fucking even higher like that. And then once those two had come out, those two singles, boom, that was enough. That was enough to cement them as one of the like best pop punk bands of all time. Obviously the best in our opinion. But like I say, Mount Rushmore for me. I think all three share a similar stage. And now the albums are hitting a nostalgic sweet spot of 20 to 25 years. So now that they're releasing new stuff, they've had another uptick in popularity because everybody's getting to the point where they're getting nostalgic for their old stuff. They've released an album with Tom again. And whilst I'm not the biggest fan, I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just not saying it's the greatest ever. One More Time, I think that has then brought a lot of people back in to listen to their old stuff anyway. They might not be listening to the newest album. They might have heard a couple of songs off it.
Do you know what's weird with One More Time? I really liked it when it came out, and now I'm not as sure. Like, I still like it. I still have like 4 or 5 songs on my playlist, but I think it was a bit bloated.
Yeah, definitely.
That's all.
And also, it was kind of like when they broke up as a band and then got back together, they had the potential to get back together like they did recently. I mean, they didn't break up, but obviously they had Skiba in. And then when Tom came back, was kind of like, it was such a cultural event for a lot of people. And that then as well just let them fucking go even higher than they were before.
And also the celebrity of all 3 acts now, obviously Travis Barker's with one of the Kardashians, and that in itself has given him worldwide exposure as well as working with, like, I know MGK gets a lot of hate, but he got a #1 album and Travis Barker produced it all and was the drummer on the whole thing. So it's like, he has just taken himself to a completely different level. He's a celebrity in his own right.
It's a lot like, a good analogy for it, I think, is like pro wrestling, when you've got a unit and they all split off and then they all reach their own successes individually.
Yeah.
And then people don't watch wrestling as much anymore, But if they heard that a group from back then was getting back together,
DX.
Guarantee, yeah, exactly. You guarantee they would be coming to watch that one match because all three of those going back. And that's what happened with Blink-182. They all came back and everyone went, oh, fuck, all eyes on them. Let's see what's going to happen here. And that is why Blink-182 are the greatest pop punk band of all time.
Nothing but respect. Let's go over our list. I'll give you. Have you got any honourable mentions?
I got one.
I've got.
The reason they're honourable is because I don't know where they land.
So that was kind of similar for me. My first honourable mention is The Story So Far.
Yeah.
I couldn't quite put them in all time, but I fucking love them, and I really wanted to.
I was really surprised you didn't.
Yeah, I wanted to. It was for me. It was like between them or Neck Deep, and I think Neck Deep is slightly better.
Okay.
But it was really hard.
Yeah.
My other, I had The Offspring in there as well, but my other two are more ones that I don't know if they're. Like, some of the music is pop punk and some isn't, and it's Panic at the Disco and My Chemical Romance.
My Chemical Romance is my one honourable mention.
Yeah, I don't know where...
Again, with Panic at the Disco, I thought, I'm not even going to bring them up this time. I'm not going to bring them up because who the fuck knows what they are? We spoke about that before as well. MCR, I think, are definitely a contender to be in there. Some would argue they'd need to be in the top 10 list, but I think a lot of their stuff... I know emo is pop punk, really, because there's not really much of a difference between the two. But I would argue that MCR, if we were going to go over alternative emo-esque bands, MCR would definitely be top 3.
Yeah, you'd have then, if we were doing like an alternative, you'd have Taking Back Sunday, Chemical Romance, Panic at the Disco. It'd be a slightly different looking list, so maybe don't punch our heads in for not having them in there.
Please.
But should we go over our lists?
Let's do it. Let's do it.
So... the top 10 pop punk artists of all time. 10th is Yellow Card. 9th is Good Charlotte. 8th is Neck Deep. 7th, Jimmy Eat World. 6th, Fall Out Boy. 5th, All Time Low. 4th, Paramore. 3rd is Sum 41. 2nd is Green Day. And 1st is Blink-182, with some honourable mentions of The Offspring, The Story So Far, and then I don't know if the pop punk, so My Chemical Romance and Panic at the Disco.
The top 10 pop punk artists of all time. Number 10, The Story So Far. Number 9, Paramore. Number 8, Bowling for Soup. Number 7, Jimmy Eat World. Number 6, Fall Out Boy. Number 5, Sum 41. Number 4, The Offspring. Number 3, Newfound Glory. Number 2, Green Day. And number 1, the greatest pop punk band of all time, Blink-182.
Humongous dubs.
Humongous dubs.
Well,
they call us Dubmongous.
That is it. Go watch. If you enjoyed this and you got to this point, go watch the top 10 pop punk albums of all time. You'll probably hear a lot of similar mentions, but a bit more of a deep dive into each album.
Yeah. I think I like this list. I think we've done well.
Yeah, and please do like and subscribe. If you're a big music fan, we just talk a lot about music, so...
We do. We talk too much about music sometimes.
Yeah, and follow us on Spotify and all that.
Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, everywhere. We're everywhere. There's nowhere we're not really. Yeah.
Safe.
Peace. Done. In a bit.